My name is Pastor Catherine, and Pastor Andy is here tonight. We welcome you to our Good Friday service. As we get started, just a quick announcement or two to guide us through this service. The first one is a reminder that on our last closing hymn, Were You There?, it should actually read hymn number 298 for those of you who read out of the hymnal. Oh, our first song, excuse me, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, should read number 298. And then also a reminder after our final closing hymn, Were You There? Once that is ended, we're going to ask that you leave in silence when the moment feels right. I thank you guys for being here tonight. We have a great crowd. And also, it's always striking to me how many people from Maundy Thursday's service decide maybe Good Friday isn't for me. And the reality is it's one of our most somber services of the year. It's one of the hardest services. It's a time in God's story and our story as human beings that's really hard to look at. But my prayer is that you encounter a God as we worship and remember the story of Jesus tonight. Let's stand now and sing together When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, hymn number 292.
298.
Please be seated.
Thank you. God, as we spend this time together, be present with us. Convict our hearts. Amen. Sloth, greed, gluttony, lust, wrath, envy. We have been wading our way through our own depravity this Lenten season. 6 of the 7 deadly sins down, with only 1 left to go. And honestly, through all these flames, we have come out toasted, maybe, but not entirely crispy, I think. As much as I have meddled up to this point, I think we've tolerated it okay. We can engage how we will and make some course corrections here and there. But what you don't know is that I have saved the very hardest of all for last. A sin so big that some of the lists of 7 don't even include it among the 7 because they say that it is the capital sin, the head sin from which all others flow. Let's think about this. Gluttony, greed, and lust. What have those to do with pride, the capital sin? Well, everything, it turns out. In gluttony, greed, and lust, we see a deep longing for fulfillment. And in our pride, we think we know just how to scratch those itches. We don't wait for godly fulfillment of our deep needs. Instead, we assert our own will. We use our bodily pleasures and mere stuff to try to meet our deeper needs. We impose our will, scratch our itch with increasing fervor, and leave raw and bloodied and only more desperate than when we started. Our own pride only gets worse as we wade into those other deadly sins too. Wrath? Yep. Our ego gets offended, our pride gets hurt, and so we lash out, often to the point of direct injury to others. This enacted wrath is nothing more than our pride lashing out, striking directly at ourselves and those around us, leading us to betray our love for neighbor. And envy is a similar thing. Envy comes from a deep spiritual longing, a desire for us to put ourselves above others. Our pride sees the good that others have, and it doesn't care as much that we have that same good. It mostly just cares that others don't have what we don't have. Our pride can't bear it. This then builds resentment and makes us lash out spitefully. This offended pride leads to envy and makes us lose all reverence for others as fully human and fully worthy of God's great love and grace. And then there's sloth. Oh, sloth. That's when we've gotten so burned out by all of the other sins that we just lose all motivation to even keep growing and working toward a better way. This is pride's selfish retreat to lick its own wounds. It's pride's final, I'm taking my ball and going home, when it fears movement so badly that it simply runs away, tail between its legs, trying instead to never press forward toward love. In all of these other sins, we see our egos offended, our pride raise up and seek to will its power above what God has willed. And even if we tamp down our deadliest of sins here and there as they crop up, this will be a never-ending process if we don't address the root. You know how addicts often leave one addiction for another? They quit drinking, then get addicted to cigarettes. They quit smoking, and they end up gaining 30 pounds because they filled that void with food. They quit overeating and get lost in pornography. They try to get clean from pornography and end up chronically grumpy and wrathful. The thing is, without addressing the root of the lacking within us, often we just jump from one thing to another to fill that endless void. We keep missing the very thing giving life to all other sins, the very head of the stream, pride. Pride seeks to place our honor and focus and decision-making squarely on us. It tries to tell us we control our own destinies, we fill our own voids, and we can make ourselves be okay if only we can make others like us, if only we can eat the right thing, if only we can feel such and such a way. Then, when we don't end up feeling okay, our pride lashes out in its hurt and anger. It looks with envy upon those who seem to have what it lacks, and it often makes us lose hope altogether when it's scorned. This pride drives so much of what we do, lurking behind the scenes and making us only a puppet. It even brings us to square off with the very one who created us. It makes us question God's judgment and choose to place ours over and above that. It makes us claim, my will, not thy will be done. And our pride, when left to its own devices, well, let's just say that it's the deadliest of deadly sins for a reason.
From Mark chapter 15, they compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull, and they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9:00 in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha, you who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. Save yourself and come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others. He can't even save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now so that we may all see and believe." Those who were crucified with him that day also taunted him.
And now, an ode to a criminally negligent God, a testament to our human pride. Before life sprung into being, before God flung massive flaming bodies of violent fusion reactions, infinitely and infinitely expandingly wide, to illustrate his passion and demonstrate his almighty power, before even there was stuff to fling wide or a space to fling it, there was God. The God who would later and rightly claim, I am that I am. A God whose name would be one day revealed, but even when revealed, still revered, too holy even to speak aloud. A God whose very words could bring the cosmos into existence and place his cosmos inside the hearts of his crowning creation. But a God here, at this point, all alone. No universe, no grand experiments or creations to share his infinite joy or pain with, only deafening silence. Pure being of the infinite holy God with nothing to sully or question his perfection. Surely this was the height of God's glory. This was God adulterated, holy, perfect, a God who was what he was. A God, perhaps, who, in his infinite wisdom, should have known to quit while he was ahead. Because God did then speak, and let there be. He spoke into existence that space. He flung into being then those flaming bodies with his tongue, and still, he could have stopped there. He could have stopped with this faceless display of grandeur, a victimless and marvelous exercise, something to behold. Even then, with his little playground erect, God could have stopped and sat unaffected and holy. God could have sat blameless and pure, teeming only with awe-inspiring and untapped potential. No accusers in sight. But God did then speak again. Spoke into that lifeless, terrifying playground something new. Life. And not only simple life, not only that life that could mindlessly dance some worshipful, pre-programmed dance, not only life that could sing out rote and perfect alleluias, instead life that could think and breathe and hold a universe within it. Life that could reflect God's very own image. And it was very good. Better than the simple, silly little microorganisms it sprung from. Better than the creatures of the sea and the beasts that roam the earth that preceded. Better by multitudes even than the flaming bodies in space. Better on a categorical, ontological level than the apes to which it was most closely related even. This little God-like thing was perfectly crafted, yes, made uniquely in its creator's image. It was eternal, the first of its kind, and its partner, both co-heirs to this magnificent display of power, in charge of naming and claiming whatever it was they pleased. Flawless in their awkward majesty, placed in their tiny, fragile bodies in the midst of the heavenly flaming bodies, eclipsed in size and strength in nearly every metric by things on their own small rock even, now subjectors of them all. They bore something more special, more powerful, something more holy and more mysterious, something bursting with potential. And that's where it all went wrong. Because along with the special and the powerful, along with the holy and the mysterious, along with the bursting with potential, this gift was also a pearl cast before an unclean and unworthy thing. Yes, a thing flawed in its very conception. It was the crowning achievement of a God whose image did not quite fit the medium which it was so confidently and recklessly thrust upon. But how could God have known? Known that it would all backfire, known that this fearfully and wonderfully made monstrosity would be so fatally flawed, known that it would not even take one generation to completely unravel. How could he have known that this web would tangle and weave in a twisted, ugly narrative with God himself as the pro and antagonist? A God who would remain unquestionably right, whose actions alone defined what even constitutes right for all of those whose lungs would be filled with breath on this earth. A God too almighty to be wrong, but whose actions from down the cheap seats seem inexcusably and criminally negligent. Who among us would give their naive young child a loaded handgun with no safety on? Who among us would offer the nuclear codes to a volatile or unstable youth? Who among us would offer access to the passion and power harnessed in the heavenly bodies to mere mortals, warped by design with delusions of grandeur? His master stroke, his immortal, beautiful, flawless image bearers, breaking the one arbitrary boundary God so coyly dangled like a carrot before them, they, these simple, foolish titans, persuaded to indulge by another, more sinister fruit, also of God's good labor. They, these experiments with God-like minds, had wasted no time. They had ruined everything, sold their birthright not even for a pot of stew. They devolved into mere beasts who would walk this earth one day and fade away the next, who would harness their God-likeness to dominate one another and bring destruction, who would squander and exploit the very thing that made them so unique. We could blame them. They were the ones holding the smoking gun. They were the ones making the walk of shame, one sheepish step at a time backward from that nuclear football. But who gave them that trigger to pull? Who gave them that power to misemploy? The very same one who would be their judge, who would unmercifully turn their death sentence into one of life. No losses cut here. Who would send them forth into a prison of isolation, limitedness, and unknowing, into a cruel, cruel game in which even the most blameless before God would watch as their friends and enemies alike get washed away in towering waves of God's rage, in which even those who had proven themselves to live best into this holy potential lose everything in majestic, callous fashion. That even they, those holy examples, would stand before God, begging and pleading for mercy, to be met with a resounding, "Where were you, O pitiful little man, when I laid the foundations of the earth?" Who are you to question the one who defines what is right? And God is right, always so right, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good. And as we stand just as we are, without one plea, damned to this strange existence, holding the universe and God-likeness within these broken jars of clay, longing for connection, longing for eternity, while our lives slip by from disease, oppression, and wanton scarcity. There we are, left grieving and unfulfilled, longing to shake our fists to the sky without fear of retribution, longing for some semblance of very goodness in the midst of this broken existence. At best, children longing for connection with the God whose image we bear, and at worst, accusers longing to meet this blameless, reckless God whose image we scorn. And then, the heavens opened up. God's very reasoning, exactly what had been so elusive up to this point, put on flesh and walked right up to us. A few folks who happened to exist at the right time and in the right place, and who had resources, friends, or dumb luck to find him, were momentarily healed. His wise words, words that reminded us that it was actually a blessing to be cursed, were recorded and repeated as gospel. His teachings, which called into question even and especially the ones he had appointed to lead us to himself, followed thousands of years after his passing. Here he was, this infinite, blameless thing, finally setting the record straight with platitudes and sign acts. And we knew just what to do. We raised our palms and alleluias. We lauded him as king. We paid our homage. Yes, because God is good, because he is blameless, because he is holy. Then, after we gave credit where credit was due, we did what we do best. We used our power. We took that wholly unaffected, wholly blameless, reckless, criminally negligent God, and we put him on trial. He took on flesh and weakness. He gave us this power. He loaded our gun and put it by his head, and all we had to do was pull the trigger. Crucify him. Crucify him. He calls himself the Lord of Lords, the King of the Jews, but just you wait and see. Bloody revenge exacted. A pristine, clean thing now finally affected. An accuser finally heard. A sky gone dark. A curtain torn. My God, what have we done? Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now, when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly, this man was God's Son."